Naughty Dog is without doubt one of the most impressive and talented studios in the gaming industry today. Each console generation, they would make new titles that end up being regarded as some of, if not the best and most iconic games on the console's whole library. This hit its peak during the PS3 generation, where they released the Uncharted series and The Last of Us. Uncharted 2 Among Thieves and The Last of Us are both considered by many to be two of the greatest games of all time. Both games also had an online component that had active communities all the way up until the time of their dismissal. On paper, these multiplayers weren't anything amazing or super special compared to the competition, but the fact that they brought the visuals and gunplay from their respective campaigns and it was taken into a PvP and in some cases PvE environment were enough to put them in a league above the rest and keep them standing out, meaning they had a devoted player base that would keep coming back. These modes didn't have much content per se. After a year or so, they would stop getting new DLC. But in spite of that, a dedicated community remained. Fast forward to when The Last of Us Part 2 was announced at PlayStation Experience. Most are excited for the campaign, of course. I mean, even me. It's Naughty Dog's signature bread and butter, their campaign. But I was also excited for the multiplayer, along with a lot of other people. But then we found out on Outbreak Day a few years later, in a small, offhand comment kind of given without any regard, that there was no multiplayer for The Last of Us Part 2. The backlash to that info getting out was so bad that Naughty Dog had to put out an official statement on Twitter saying that Part 2 would indeed ship without multiplayer, but that it was because a standalone project was in the works instead. Thus we waited, and waited, and waited.
Several months later.
Nothing but concept art, released some 2 years later after that initial statement was given. It was still being worked on. Just letting you guys know, it's still being worked on. Then they would throw in some rumors about Bungie, which PlayStation had recently acquired, giving the game kind of a bad look when it came to how the game would work as a live service title. This led to them shutting the game down or putting it on ice, as the media was saying. But then we got another statement from Naughty Dog saying that, oh no, the game is still coming out, we're just working on it, it's going to be delayed further, please stay tuned. However, that also ended up not being true because of the statement that we just received from Naughty Dog this past Friday. Yeah, they canceled it. Needless to say, me and a bunch of other people are upset about this news. We've been fed false hope now for well over 3 years. But the standalone game being canceled isn't why I'm upset or even why I'm making this video. I'm upset because this is fully on the leadership at Naughty Dog, who not only wasted their time of the developers there, but also lied to all of us consumers. But again, they wasted time of their world-class developers on a project that they never really wanted to sign off on in the first place, weren't passionate about, and what I believe was secretly just put there against their will, and they kind of wanted to cancel it from the beginning. When you look at Naughty Dog's history of multiplayer, aside from Uncharted 3, Naughty Dog has never really put in that much effort for their multiplayer experiences. Even with diehard Factions fans, we were expecting this. When we heard Factions 2 along with The Last of Us Part 2, we were figuring, okay, it'll probably be something simple. Maybe they'll have 2 or 3 more modes than just supply raids and interrogations. Maybe a co-op mode if we're reaching out there. And probably just do like a seasonal battle pass, which matches what the industry is doing now. But instead, they decided to make a whole live service game with a whole campaign that you could play through.
What is this?
Naughty Dog, we didn't ask for that. We didn't want that. All we wanted was supply raid and interrogations brought back with maybe 3 or 4 more game modes in addition to that. Add in some new weapons, the ones from Part 2, maybe some new exclusive ones for the multiplayer. The Part 2 mechanics like prone and dodging, implement that into the experience. Again, at most, I was thinking they could add in a co-op mode where you play as like a horde mode type thing where you just fight off infected or fight off other survivors. Basically, we were thinking Yeah, probably about the same level of content that like Uncharted 4's multiplayer had. But for part 2, now we aren't getting anything because they went and ignored the fans' pleas and wants, and because they tried to do their own thing for a game that they weren't passionate about in the first place, and don't care about the community yet. Clearly, as their recent statement showed. This is where I need to be crystal clear in the video. I'm not blaming any of the actual developers that worked on the project in this video. In fact, I genuinely feel sorry for all of you. All of you had your time wasted by your upper management that was having you waste time and resources on the project that they didn't want to release and didn't want to see the light of day. And you can tell that because of how they worded their statement. So this project was basically doomed from the start, and I hate the sick response Naughty Dog has done with how they canceled it and the terrible reason they gave for it. Naughty Dog's management basically sabotaged the whole studio with this mess. These devs could have been helping out on other projects after putting in far less time on the simple factions that the fans were expecting. A realistic goal, that's all we needed from the start. Just make us simple factions, add some tweaks, improve it, that's it. Most of the team goes on to work on the other single player content at Naughty Dog, and some stay behind to add a little bit of content for the years that follow. But right now they've had a team wasting time, effort, resources, R&D, all of this stuff for something that's not going to see the light of day. This was basically like a scam. I can't call them fantastic exactly, because that was actually a scam. They actually tried to get money for that. But this is the same energy. Naughty Dog's management did not care about this project, and you can clearly tell by the scope they gave it, this unrealistic scope. So that Bungie assessment that they put out saying, oh yeah, this is not going to work for a live service, you don't have enough content, and all the other critiques they had, they were probably spot on, because as we've seen as of late, Naughty Dog is as cocky as Sony is right now, and that's just a recipe for disaster, and it's showing in their reception online and in the quality of their content. What angers me most about the statement that we got though, and this is why I cannot support this studio until they actually put out a legit statement with the real reason why the game is actually not coming out. They said that they would have to devote the whole studio to the game to support it and to keep it going for the years to come.
So we don't have the capacity.
Naughty Dog, again, who asked for you to make a factions mode this big? No one wanted you to go and make some GTA Online sized game. These are smart people at Naughty Dog. That's why I believe it has to have been sabotaged to a degree. No one wanted this. You weren't going to attract that many people with this. As a diehard factions fan, even I have to say, if that's the reason they had to cancel the mode, I am glad, because why would you kill your studio on a games as a service? One specifically, like not even just multiple games as a service, you do like 3, 1 success, you stick with that. No, they were about to jump, they said they would have had to jump ship to this one game. How big were you making this game? This game that all we wanted from was like 6 modes, maybe co-op, and the newer animations from the sequel. That's why I just feel sad for the devs. They told them to basically make the second coming of online. When the fans didn't want that, the devs probably were like, oh, okay, I'm up for the challenge. Started making progress, but they realized, well, nope, it's not physically possible, so you've wasted your time. That's why I'm more pissed at the management and sad for the devs, because this was just a huge waste of time. You wasted your dev time, you wasted our time, and you pretty much lied to us the whole time, because there's no way you didn't think this game was actually going to come out. There's no way you thought those ambitious goals of yours were going to work for an online game that requires other people. If this type of ambition was used for single player games, which for them it usually is, okay, it makes sense, but trying to make their multiplayer to the same level of insanity as their single player, strike one right there. And I'm not even surprised at this, because this kind of follows Naughty Dog's trend with their multiplayer content. Whenever Naughty Dog makes a multiplayer game, when it's one that's kind of like tacked on last minute, they don't care, those end up being the best multiplayer experiences that they make. Uncharted 2 versus 3, for example. A lot of people will say Uncharted 3's multiplayer was better, but it just had more content in it. The actual game itself was an unbalanced mess. It felt like you were in the Marvel Universe more than you were playing Uncharted, with all the kickbacks and the overpowered boosters. It wasn't a good time compared to 2, which was far more balanced. The issues in 2, you could count on like one hand. The issues in 3, until the last patch they put out after the game was already dead, there was a laundry list of things wrong with Uncharted 3's multiplayer from a balance and visual perspective. Uncharted 2's multiplayer, for example, looked about the same as the campaign as far as the fidelity. Uncharted 3's looked cartoony, like the graphics took a noticeable dive compared to the campaign. And then we had Uncharted 3 not come to PS4 with the Nathan Drake collection along with Uncharted 2. And they said they didn't want to do that because, it'll split up the player base. The same player base that they split up themselves when they shut the games off about a few years later. And then you had Uncharted 4. They once again put in some effort into that one, and it was also kind of That one's still up, but I don't even play that one anymore because it's not as good as 2's was. It's probably better than, I'd say it's better than 3's. It's just the lack of content, which a lot of people care about that more than the actual game itself, but that's just me. I'm rambling at this point. My only issue with this whole thing is Naughty Dog, why? Why? We literally just wanted a few modes, some more weapons, the new mechanics, the new movements, that's all we wanted, and you tried to make the next coming of online gaming. This had to have been sabotage. Why? This is the equivalent of if a kid asks his parents, hey, can I go see this new Disney movie? The parents try to buy out the whole theater at Disney Springs. Oh, we can't afford to do that. Nope, you're not going to see that movie, son. But I just wanted one ticket. Yeah, but I can't afford to buy out the whole theater, so you're not going to see that movie. This is what Naughty Dog just basically did to the factions community. We didn't ask for this. We just wanted something simple. And you tried to give us this massive game that we didn't even want. I wasn't even that looking forward to this game because of how big the scope it got. And I was like, I was actually afraid that it wouldn't have a basic modes like supply raid and interrogations. I was starting to be worried it was going to be just the campaign that they kept talking about and other co-op stuff. And apparently from the leaked image, apparently they did have the separate modes as an option. So yeah, if I was excited for about 20% of the game that's now canceled and we're not getting anything for. So thanks again, Naughty Dog management. I thank you so much. Naughty Dog has just been delivering non-stop disappointing news since The Last of Us Part 2 was released. We've got remasters that are completely unnecessary and remakes that don't make any changes to anything about the game except for the visuals. We don't even know when we'll see or play their next game, but they were quick to jump and use that as a defense for this game being canceled. One of the games they're working on is definitely Part 3. At this point, all I can do is huff on the copium and hope that they take what they learned from this failure and give us a realistic, actually requested version of factions for that game whenever it comes out. And we can just hope that the management isn't as arrogant going forward, because it's not looking good for Naughty Dog. We're 3 years into this generation. They've done 2 remasters and 1 bottom of the barrel remake. They've done a remake of The Last of Us Part 1 that fails as a remake because it doesn't actually change anything. They use the same audio, the same animations. They just improved the visuals and used some motion blending to make the animations look a little bit more natural. The Metroid Prime remaster we got this year was a better effort. And not only was it cheaper, it was on a weaker hardware, but that was more worth the money than Part 1. And if Factions wasn't coming out, why didn't you just remaster the first one and put it on the disc with The Last of Us Part 1? That could have been your first live service test right there. How does this PS3 game work in a new environment? You wouldn't have had to make brand new content. You would just had to remake the assets and make them higher quality. But again, I'm ranting because Naughty Dog clearly doesn't care about the multiplayer community. They barely care about their community in general because they put that statement out at Friday night at like 7 p.m. AKA, you put that out when you want as few people to see it as possible. even though for something this big, the word's going to spread around and people will be on them the next time they make any post at all. So they might keep their post locked for a few more days this coming week. It's just an absolute mess. Until then, all we can do is endure and survive till we see the next bad news they got lined up for us. But hey, at least Sony gave us some God of War Ragnarok DLC, which was actually really good. But when you think about it, you think about how Spider-Man 2 was delayed, not the game, the New Game Plus update, and you think about this news with factions, I'm starting to see why that DLC was free, because Sony doesn't just do some pro-consumer stuff like that. I had a red flag when I saw it was free, especially when I started playing it and realized how high quality it was. I was like, what happened? Something very bad has happened for them to give away this quality DLC for free, and here we are. Spider-Man 2 New Game Plus delayed, not that big a deal. Insomniac has actually been making games, so them delaying something is well earned. I'm not even bothered by that. But then you have factions being canceled. This game that they've told us, oh, don't worry, we're still working on something, since 2019. And now we've got nothing. And the way they worded that post, I don't think we're going to get any multiplayer from Night Dog again, because they just don't care.